Hey there. So I'm going to quickly cover the things you need to know from the previous video to continue with this one, and then we're going to launch into some new riffs. So the first thing is you need to understand that moving a note up 12 frets means it's the same note. So this is an F, and at 12th fret it's also an F. You also need to know what a tritone is, which is a root note and then a note 6 frets higher. Then we also subdivided that further. So we have 12 frets and we cut it in half. Now we have 6 frets. And we cut that in half again. And now we have 0, 3, 6, 9, 12. Or a diminished 7 arpeggio. Right? So a basic rule we explored there with Meshuggah is that a lot of their riffs are based on notes that are 3 frets apart. Basically. Right? 3 or 6 or 9. Obviously, this isn't the entire formula to sounding like Meshuggah, or it would be very easy to write riffs like Meshuggah. Just make sure every note is a multiple of 3 semitones away from a previous note. So let's say, like Neurotica, the first example from last week, we took a really simple riff based on a tritone. So we've got our open note, 6th fret, and we're going to be cool and we're going to move that up 12 frets, so from the 6th to the 18th. And that's a little annoying to play there, so I'm going to move this note to here. And then I've got a tritone up an octave, and it sounds something like this. Cool, so I almost have a riff there. And before, we would have just moved things 3 frets, right? So maybe like... Okay. That doesn't give us enough notes. So what cool other notes are there? So why don't we take this idea of the diminished 7 triad, right? Everything being 3 frets apart. What if we, for each note in that, added the note that was 1 fret higher? So instead of just using this and this, we used... we might get something cool. So by adding the note that's 1 fret higher to the diminished triad, we've literally doubled our note choices. And it's also created this nice simple pattern, right? If we take 0, 3, 6, 9, 12, and we just add the note 1 fret up each time, so 0, 1, 3, 4, 6, 7, 9, 10, and then we're going to be back at 12, and the pattern's going to repeat from there, right? So it's going to be 12, 13, 15, 14, 15, 16. I've accidentally revealed I cannot count. So this pattern just repeats forever, and it's very simple. It's any note, go up 1 fret, go up 2 frets, go up 1 fret, go up 2 frets, go up 1 fret, go up 2 frets. Forever, right? And you can change the fingering to make it a little bit more comfortable, but that's the basic idea. And this is, for me, I think of this as the distinctive Meshuggah sound. So here's another cool riff using this idea, and I'm going to show you how it's part of the same scale structure exactly as Demiurge. So I hope with last week's video, I convinced you that the diminished sound, that sound based on everything being 3 frets apart, is the kind of core foundation. And this week I'm showing you that you can add an additional subdivision on top of that to give you more notes to work with. So we tried adding notes, tried taking the diminished 7 arpeggio and adding all the notes 1 fret higher, but we could also fit in all the notes that are 2 frets higher, right? So instead of going like half step, so 0, 1, 3. We could go 0, 2, 3. And then continue that pattern. And 1 plus 2 and 2 plus 1 sum to 3. So we're still going to end up with a pattern that hits 3, 6, 9, 12, but the other notes are going to be different. So the previous scale is often called the half whole scale, right? Because it goes a half step, 1 fret, and a whole step, 2 frets. This scale is often called the whole half scale for obvious reasons. And of course, I've got a riff example for you. So here's a little thought experiment for you, right? Are the whole half and half whole scales really different? Because if you start on the second note of the whole half scale, you get the half whole scale, and vice versa. So one of the nice things about this means that once you've learned one of those scales, you've automatically learned the other one. It's like when you learn the major scale, you get all the modes for free. Same way, you learn half whole, you get whole half for free. So now we're talking a lot about scales. And one of the things about scales is they take all the notes that provide a certain sound, in this case a diminished sound, but when you hear the scale, they're in order. And like if you painted with your colors in order, scales tend to sound boring, and it's not so obvious how people get riffs from scales. So I'm going to show you a more interesting riff, and it's definitely still based on the same half-whole diminished scale that we saw before, but it moves around a bit more, and it's not just the kind of scale notes in order or jumbled up a little bit within a few frets of each other. So, to recap, we took our basic structure from last week. Everything was 3 frets apart. And then we added the notes that were either 1 fret higher than that or 2 frets higher than that. And that gives us 2 new scales, the whole half and half whole diminished scales. So I've given you some cool examples now, and these are, in some ways, this is the end of the easy to explain stuff when it comes to Meshuggah's note choice. And we'll get into why if I do another video, which I'm pretty sure I will. If people have topics they'd really like to see discussed, please leave them in the comments and I'll try and get to them. I would like to look at, for example, Frederick's solos, although I'm going to have to rely on internet tabs to do that. I'd like to do stuff on their soundscapey kind of things, like what's going on in the background when the heavy riffs are playing. And during the clean sections, right? Because I don't think anyone's really analysed that kind of stuff. And I'd like to thank you for making the previous video the most successful one my channel has uploaded since YouTube Analytics came out. So I have like a little notification from Google, and it says this has 999% more minutes viewed than any of my recent uploads. So thank you everyone, and I hope you are still enjoying the series.